Hi everyone. Today I'm going to make a skyscraper out of a recycled milk carton. And all I need is some paint, a paintbrush, and a milk carton that's been washed out in order to do it. I started by setting out a paper bag that I had cut up and putting it all over my kitchen table so that way I didn't make a mess. That's in part because making a mess with the paint is kind of half the fun of this whole project, but not if it gets on the table. So I'm going to take a little bit of paint and I'm going to just put it right on the paper bag that I've set up. You can use newspaper or anything else that you'd like. And the first step is to take some of the paint and put it on your brush and just start covering the one side of your milk carton or whatever carton you're using. And you'll notice that I'm using the side that doesn't have the hole. Okay, we'll have to figure out what we're gonna do with that side later on. I'm just gonna keep applying this white paint to the top of my milk carton and notice that I'm going in the same direction as I do this. Okay, so use the same direction of your paint stroke as you paint the box. And you'll notice with your paint as you're going that you can still see through the paint, right? I can still see the design underneath this paint, which is telling me that I might have to do a couple of coats. I'm going to be careful not to apply it too thick. I'm going to end up needing a lot of paint in order to cover this and cover the design, but I don't want that paint to be too thick all at once, or else it's going to look like really big globs. And you'll notice right now all I'm doing is running my paintbrush along my paint just to even everything out. And I'm going to keep applying this white paint until I see the design start to go away. And what I might need to do is apply one coat, just like what I've done, and smoothen it out. That looks pretty good. And then I'm gonna let it dry a little bit. And because the paint is so thin, it's going to dry pretty quickly. So I'm gonna leave this for a couple minutes. I'm gonna let it dry, and then I'm going to come back and I'm gonna use some more white paint to finish covering it up. And while I let one section dry, I can actually start working on the other section. And as I do this, I'm kind of starting to think about what kind of house I want to make or what kind of skyscraper. You'll notice every time I add that little glob of paint, I just run my paintbrush really lightly across just to smooth it out. And sometimes when you smoothen it out, you end up taking some of the paint away by accident. So I'm just gonna add some more paint. Okay, so I think I've got enough paint. I'm gonna let this dry. And I'm gonna start thinking about what other colors I'm going to use as well. And I might need to come back for a second coat of white paint, but I'll just leave this for a few minutes. One of the cool things, just as we wait for this to dry, one of the cool things is to take the newspaper or whatever it is you're using as your palette and whatever it is you're using to keep your dining room table clean, and start thinking about how after your project, what you might want to make out of the design that is going to be left on the newspaper underneath. Like, I always like to look at all of the different paint splotches that are all over the paper that I've laid out and see if I might be able to create some abstract painting or some cool design using the paint that's kind of left over. So just put that in the back of your head for right now as you let this dry. And if you really want something to do while you wait for it to dry, you can just kind of start playing and start making a little bit of a mess on the newspaper that you've laid out. Because like I said, that's kind of half the fun, right? Making messes. Okay, we're going to wait a couple minutes while this dries, and then we're gonna pick back up again. Okay, so now I'm going to let my project dry. I added 2 coats. I actually wanted to show you. So on this side, I added 2 coats of paint, okay? And I'm being careful right now not to let this rest on the paper underneath, or else the wet paint on the other side is going to transfer onto my paper. So I added 2 coats on this side, and on this side, I added only 1 coat. Do you see the difference between this side, which is pretty white, and this side where you can see the white kind of wasn't enough? So it looks like you're going to need a couple of coats of white paint in order to do this project. And what you'll want to do is let 1 coat dry and then come back after a couple minutes and add another coat. So that way you have different layers and you're able to cover whatever your milk carton said, okay? You'll notice even with this side, it's got a couple of coats of paint on it and still you can see a little bit of the design underneath, right? Especially on the bottom. That's okay. I'm kind of okay with this whole project being imperfect. I think one of the cool things is that we are always going to know that this project started as a milk carton and is going to end as a skyscraper, right? And since we know that it starts as a milk carton, you know, we're going to do our best to cover up what's underneath it so we can add our design. But if we don't cover up everything, every single part, that's okay too, okay? The different imperfections all over my milk carton, I think kind of give it some character, right? Like I'm going to leave this inside right here, I'm going to leave it kind of blue, and I'm not going to add another coat onto this side because I'm going to plan to add some designs on top of it. I might add like some construction paper, I might add some more markers. Really this white paint that we're covering the milk carton is really just giving us a base layer. So that way we can add different designs onto our skyscraper later on. Okay, so the point is that we need to let it dry. Probably we'll see how long it takes to dry. I'll come back every couple of minutes. Maybe I'll get a drink of water while I wait. And the point is that if they've got some imperfections, don't worry about it, okay? You don't have to worry about covering each and every single little part. Just do your best. The point is to have fun as you're doing it and use all the paint that you squirted out of your bottle, right? So you can see over here, I've got some paint left. I should use that up. So I'm gonna keep painting, keep adding another coat until I use all of my paint, okay? I'm not gonna squirt any more paint out. So if later on I notice there's like an imperfection or if I run out of paint, I'm gonna be okay with that. Okay, again, because the whole point is that we're giving some new life to something that otherwise we would have thrown out. And I think that's pretty cool, just kind of by itself, okay? We all have like different imperfections anyway, right, in what we design. And I think that's what kind of gives our project some character. That way we know, like, whose project it is, right? I mean, like, what fun would it be if everyone's project always looked the same? So those little beauty marks, the things that make it different, kind of want to leave there. I want to make it so people know that this is Mr. Knaus's project. Okay, so it looks like I used up most of my paint. I added another coat. Perfect. Okay. I smoothed it out just like we talked about before. Now I'm just gonna let it dry. So I'm just gonna let my milk carton dry. I'll just leave it here and I'll come back a little bit later on and I'll see if it's dry and then we'll be ready to move on to the next step. While I wait, I'm gonna go wash my brush because if I let my brush dry, it's going to harden up and it's gonna be really, really hard to get this paint off these bristles. Okay, so I'm gonna go, I'm going to either use this brush while I wait for this to dry, or I'm going to go wash it out right away, okay? And then we'll come back and we'll use it for another color in a little bit. I am so excited to keep painting. The first thing I'm gonna do before I keep going is I'm going to check to make sure it's dry. Notice how I keep holding the carton from the very top where I didn't have a lot of paint, okay? So I'm holding it from the top. I'm gonna take my finger and I'm gonna just go to one part that I painted. Maybe I'll go to the back. Remember how I mentioned how I wasn't sure what I was gonna do since this side had the hole on it? Just gonna put my finger on it really quickly. And notice how there's paint that comes out on my finger, okay? And get ready because your fingers are going to be a mess by the end of this project. Again, the mess is like half the fun, if not more. But anyway, notice that when I touch, I have a little bit of paint on my finger. It shows that I am not yet ready to keep going, because if I start adding paint with different colors on top of this white paint that's not yet dry, the paint's going to start mixing together, and unless you want that to happen, which you might, it's going to make your project a little bit more difficult. So we're gonna let this keep waiting, okay, and keep drying. I know it's really hard to wait all that long to keep working on your project, but I promise you it's worth it. And as soon as your milk carton is dry, you can keep going. Okay, I'm really excited because now I know for sure that my milk carton is dry. So I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with the front of my milk carton / skyscraper, but I do know that on the sides, I would like to have some like really funky design. So I think I'm gonna do GCDS colors of orange and black. I have my black paint, but I just realized that I don't have orange. All I have is red and yellow, which I can easily put together in order to make orange. So that's the first one I'm gonna do. I'm going to take a little bit of red. I'm gonna move my skyscraper out of the way. Take a little bit of red. Let's see. The red wasn't coming out, so I'm going to just check. Looks like it was like stuck a little bit. So I have a napkin near me to clean up any messes. Gonna take a look and see what's going on. So notice how there seems to be a little protector inside my cap. I'm just gonna use a pen to poke it out. I'm gonna make a real mess with my fingers right now, but that's okay. Like I said, making a mess is kind of fun. There we go. So now that I figured out why my paint wasn't coming out of the tube, I will wipe off my hands, because if I take these red hands and touch that beautiful white milk carton, there's gonna be a real mess. Okay, now I'm going to put my cap back on, and now I should be able to get the red paint that I wanted. There we go, beautiful. Okay, I probably put too much red paint out, but that's okay. I'll find a use for it. Now let's check our yellow. Yellow came out without a problem. Again, too much yellow, but what can you do? It's okay. Now I'm going to take the two and I'm basically just going to combine them. I'm not going to combine them right away, because maybe later on, if I want to use some yellow or if I want to use some red, I'll already have it out, and I don't want to have to squirt out more because I already kind of squirted out too much by accident. So I'm just going to take some red, put it over here, take some yellow, put it over here, mix it together, trying to get some orange. Let's see if we can get some orange. Ah, we've got a little bit of orange coming. So it looks like we might even need more yellow than we originally thought. So let's see here. Whoa, we are using a whole bunch of yellow. Did you notice what just happened? That we actually put out just the right amount of yellow. So when you do this, if you're doing the same thing where you're mixing red and yellow in order to get orange, you're going to need just a tiny bit of red but a whole bunch of yellow, and when you mix it together, you'll get orange. Okay, look, I used all of my yellow and almost none of my red. How weird is that? Okay, so now I've got my orange, perfect. I'm gonna kind of clean up my brush a little bit because it's kind of chunky with all of this paint. And now the fun begins. Whoa, sorry about that, guys. So now I'm gonna set my milk carton down on a clean spot, and I'm going to start making just some orange lines. And I'll tell you right now, if it starts to look messy, that's okay. Okay, because we just don't really know where this is gonna take us. Whoa, nice. Okay, got a nice orange line here. You know, I was thinking of doing orange and black stripes, and I think what I'll do is I'll do black down the middle. So I'll just put orange on either side. You know what I might actually do I'm actually going to paint this whole side orange. Because if I want to add black stripes, I was thinking maybe I could make them look like tiger stripes. And in that case, I would use like a black marker rather than black paint. And I would need the whole thing to be orange. So I'm going to make my whole side orange. You might be wondering, like, why, Mr. Knaus, did we just spend all that time painting this side white if we were just going to paint over it? And that's an excellent question. I had you do that because I wanted to have a little bit of primer on the milk carton, so that way we didn't run into that same issue. Remember before when we were adding the white, you could see almost right through it? I didn't want to be using this like fantastic orange and run into that same problem. Because now, did you notice you can't see through the milk carton anymore? It's only orange. You can't see the back end. That's because we kind of started with the first layer of white and then we let that white dry, and now we're putting another layer of orange on top of that white. Okay, I'm gonna make the other side orange as well. Again, I'm being really careful of my fingers right now because I might get some paint on my milk carton by accident if I'm not careful. Okay, and now I'm going to paint the other side of my milk carton. Now this time I can't leave my milk carton down on the table like I did before because I've got this wet paint on this side. So I'm just gonna hold it on the top. Okay, and again, before I pick it up, I made sure my hands were clean or at least dry. Okay, I'm gonna make this whole side orange. Just painting the whole thing orange. Like I said, I don't want to really waste any paint. So now that I'm painting this and I see all this red paint I've got out, I'm gonna have to think about what I'm gonna do with that red paint. And I would love to hear from all of you what you would do at this point in the project with all of that extra red paint. Where would you put that on your skyscraper? Okay. Being super careful around the edges because I only want orange on this side. I'm not sure if I want orange on the other sides yet. And sometimes even when you're careful around the edges, you'll notice, you see how a little bit of orange kind of got on the other side? That's okay. I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it because I think it's gonna end up looking really cool no matter what. Okay. What do you think? I've got orange on both sides. You think I should probably put some orange on the inside right here? I think I'm going to because I've got some extra orange left over that, like, why not? And with this, it's kind of quick, just running the orange inside the middle. Good. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing with the other side now. I'm really liking this orange that we made. It's kind of even better than if they gave us orange. It was cool making it too. Okay. See, look, there was some white. This is why it was so important to make sure it dried. There was some white that hadn't dried inside, and look, it got right on my paintbrush. So what that's gonna do is it's just gonna make my orange a little bit lighter. I'm just gonna let that fade in, okay? And as you do this project, you're gonna discover things just like I did, where you don't realize that the paint hadn't dried and you pick it up and it's on your hands, or it's on the box, or you forgot that you had paint all over your hands and you go to pick up your box and all of a sudden you have paint on your box. No big deal, okay? With this project, we are just like taking it and running with it. There are no plans. All we know is that we are going to make a skyscraper of some kind. We knew where we start, we have no idea where we end, and that is just fine by me. Okay, so now I've got the orange on both sides. I'm gonna add black later on once it dries. And now I'm going to start thinking about what's going to go on the other sides. specifically this side. I'm really wondering what I want to put on this side because this will be the front of the skyscraper, kind of the front of the house. Well, I have this extra red paint, and I think any house is going to need some kind of roof, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this paintbrush aside for a second. It's okay that I haven't cleaned it yet. I might come back to it. And I'm just gonna find a really small brush, this one. Okay, I'm gonna use this brush. And I'm gonna use this brush to make shingles, like for the roof of my house. And right now I'm standing up, but I might kneel because I want to be like really precise. And we'll put this right here. Perfect, okay. I'm gonna roll my paintbrush a little bit in the paint. I could have even chosen a smaller paintbrush, but this was the smallest I had. And I'm just going to roll it a little bit on my newspaper because I think I had too much paint. And now I'm just gonna start making my design. And you saw how I ran out of paint. That's okay, I just kept going because I wanted to have that line drawn. Now I can cover that line again. Let's see here. Okay. And perfect. Okay, so I've got my first line drawn. And I'm going to do the same thing again, where I'm going to draw another line. I'm going to be A-okay if I run out of paint, just like I did. Going to see if there's any more paint on the other side of the brush. There was a little bit. And I'm just going to keep going. There we go. Okay, we're going to keep going here. Okay. Perfect. I'm gonna clean up my line a little bit. Okay, good. Do you think I should add one more line? I think I'm gonna add one more line at the bottom. Perfect. Okay. And perfect, okay. And now that I've got 3 lines, I was thinking of making my shingles look like squares. So I'm gonna take a little bit more paint, and now I'm just gonna start making vertical lines. Just like that. Perfect. Outline was a little thick, so I'm gonna try and make it a little bit skinnier this time. Just like that. I don't need a lot of paint on my brush for this, just a little bit. Perfect, okay. Use a little bit more. Okay, last one, I think. Perfect. Okay, just gonna clean up a couple. Make sure they all kind of end at the same spot. Great, okay, I've got shingles for my house. Oh my goodness, look, we put some of the orange on the bottom of the milk carton. That's okay. We just have to be careful to make sure that when it dries, that we leave it drying on a covered surface like what we're working on, because we wouldn't want to go set it down on our like beautiful white windowsill and get orange paint all over it. That's definitely something I would have done when I was your age. Okay, so we are going to pause for a second. I'm going to think about my design and think about what I might add, and I'm gonna grab a few colors and I'll be right back. Okay, so I was looking at my supplies and I found that I had all of these really cool markers. So I think what I'm gonna do is, now that my white paint is all dry, I'm going to actually use markers in order to draw on it. And now I'm going to use these markers to draw windows and all kinds of designs on the front of my skyscraper to make it look really cool. And this is the time where you're really testing whether or not the paint is as dry as you thought it was. So again, you might want to do the finger test. Okay, good. I did the finger test. There are no wet spots, so I should be good to go. If I press down really hard on this paint, it might still come up a little bit because it's still drying, even though the top layer has dried. So I'm still going to be careful and just be careful about how I hold my pen. And let's add a window at the top. And I'm going to make a big window here. And I'm going to have a whole bunch of windows, maybe inside this building. There's a whole bunch of people that live inside. What do you think what type of people live inside of our skyscraper? Is it everyone in our class? Maybe all of your friends? Who's living inside of our skyscraper? That is a good question. But we do know our skyscraper is really tall, at least in our imaginations, and it has a whole bunch of windows. How nice would it be to live in a room that has a whole bunch of windows? You get all of that beautiful light. Now, I'm just adding windows to our skyscraper, but I know that you guys are going to be so creative, and I really can't wait to see what you add onto your skyscraper, because I have a feeling that you're going to have a whole bunch of ideas. Okay, so we have 3 floors of windows, and I think that you can take it from here. I think I'll leave it to your imagination as far as what you want to design, but the point is that markers seem to be working really well. And I'm just going to use blue to draw a door at the bottom. Okay, so there's my little door. I've got some windows, and we know that markers work really well for drawing on top of dried paint. Talking about paint, we still have all of this red paint we've got to do something with. So on our to-do list is to add some tiger stripes or some kind of stripe to our orange sides. And also we have this other side that we kind of need to know what to do with. And I'm noticing now that I probably put it on some wet orange paint before. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint this whole side. I'm gonna paint this whole side red. And I'm going to actually, when I paint this, I'm gonna try and make it kind of like a kaleidoscope, or maybe I'll just blend some colors. So I'm not even gonna wash my brush at this point. I'm gonna use the same brush I was using before with the orange, and I'm just gonna go wild, okay? And I'm gonna see what happens. And I am totally okay that this is mixing with some white, it's mixing with some orange. It's looking cool. So on the one side of our skyscraper, we've got some windows, we've got a door. On the other sides, we have orange, getting ready to paint some cool tiger stripes. And on this side, I'm going to use this side to do a little bit of art. And really just not be worried so much about drawing straight lines anymore, or not getting paint somewhere. This is kind of the most relaxing part to me, when we get to just paint and not really think. And not be worried if we make a mistake. That's when I think we become really creative. I'm even gonna paint the top here. I'm not gonna waste any paint. So my challenge is to use all this paint that I've already put on my paper. Okay, now's the time to add those tiger stripes. So you'll notice that I finished up using my red paint, and I've got some streaks of yellow and orange in here, which I'm really happy about. And now I'm going to add those tiger stripes on the side of my carton. And I decided to use the black paint. I could have easily used a black marker, but I didn't want to wait for this paint to dry all the way. I was really excited to add these tiger stripes, so I just decided to use some black paint instead. And I keep saying tiger stripes, but I think I'm going to just add like some cool designs. Like this one, I think I'm gonna do polka dots. You could do tiger stripes, or you could draw a tiger. You could even use your thumb to add thumbprints on this side. And to do that, all you would do is take a little bit of black paint, probably no more than I put out here, and then put your thumb in it, and then put your thumb on the carton and see what happens. I love using my fingers as brushes sometimes because you can be really messy, and sometimes it comes out really cool because your finger has all these lines on it, and those lines end up coming out onto your design when you press your thumb or your finger onto your paint. Just kind of being completely random here. And again, if it mixes, that's okay. If it mixes with another color, that's okay. Just add more black. Some of my dots are going to be really big, and some of them are going to be really small. Some of them are going to be really close together, and some of them are going to be really far apart. Okay, that side's done. Now we've got to think about that other side. Again, I'm still being super careful with how I'm holding my box. What do I want to do with this one? I think with this side, I'm going to draw squiggly lines. Cool, you see what just happened? Some of the white paint on the bottom came through as I was going, which I think adds a really cool design to this, and I wasn't even expecting it. Okay, one more squiggly line. What's great about this project is that you've got 4 sides and a top, and even a bottom if you really wanted to add a design to. which to me is just like super fun because you have so much space to be creative and there's no way that you can mess up, right? Like I thought I was just gonna do a couple squiggly lines and then as I was going, I changed my mind and I started adding more. There are no rules for this project. There's no right way and no wrong way. If you've got a paintbrush in your hand and some paint on your fingers, you are doing a good job. Cool. Okay, so I've got some squiggly lines on this side. I've got my cool kind of tie-dye canvas on this one. I've got my polka dots on this side, and on this side I've got the house that I originally started with for my skyscraper project. And when I'm done, I'm gonna let this dry, and then I've got all of these cool paints here, and I think I'm going to just kind of mix them together and use my paintbrushes to see what I can create on this brown paper bag that I've laid out, because I don't want to waste the paint that I've already got here, and I'm not quite ready to clean my brushes yet. So I'm gonna see if I can make any cool designs with this paper that I've laid down, and that way that's kind of like an added benefit to working with paper before you throw it away. Okay, this was a really fun project and I'm really glad I was able to do this with you. I can't wait to see what you create. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. And if you have any questions as we do this, I am here to help you. And I hope that you get lots of paint on your fingers just like I did and you make a really big mess, because that is a sure sign that you're having a lot of fun. Okay, I'll talk to you guys all later.